Hello, my friends, and welcome to continued coverage of Grand Prix Toronto. Coming at you live from Canada. My name's Riley. I'm joined by Eduardo Sajgalik. It's great to have his company. Great to have your company. We're all along here for the ride to the end of the action of the Swiss portion of the tournament today. Five-color humans against Bogles, Dan Ward and Syed. These guys, Eduardo, fighting for their lives. It is a win and in. The winner of this match will be in the top 8.
Yep, it's actually as simple as that. They're at one of the higher tables, so whoever wins this gets through. And the matchup we're watching, Bogles versus five-color humans. As far as I know, Bogles loves these matchups. Creature-based matchups that cannot really go over the top. That's what Bogles wants. They want to get... So what Dan Ward's looking for here is to slam a Daybreak Cornet onto this Glade Cover Scout, have a massive first striking, trample, lifelinking monster that Zen cannot deal with, and that'll be it. But cards like Kitesail Freebooter and Medley Major are going to be key, especially in the early game, to make sure that Dan Ward can't assemble Voltron.
Yeah, this is a different type of Voltron we're seeing assembled here. The Bogles deck is really at its peak when facing off against these other creature decks that can't put up meaningful enough blockers. And the reason you can't just chuck, for example, 1/1 tokens in the way of these enormous hexproof creatures is because of Rancor. And Rancor is so difficult to deal with in a vacuum. And when you consider that it gives trample to any sort of big, dumb, lifelinking, vigilance, trample, banding, flanking, horsemanship attacker, it's very, very difficult for a creature-based deck to keep on parity here.
Right, especially because later on, Dan Ward also has a copy or two of Spirit Mantle, and those will allow him to go through uncontested. You can kind of see a little bit of bad luck here, since Leyline of Sanctity is only an option because Dan drew it.
Not in the well, presumably not in the opening hand. I don't think Dan Ward got to 12-2 at a GP by not playing a Leyline of Sanctity on turn 0. This is, interestingly, the direction that Bogles decks have taken recently. Getting to us more about this. Why are we playing Leylines in the main?
Right, it's because you get to the last cards in the deck, and you're getting to the very conditional auras you don't want to draw two of that are very marginal. So instead of that, you play the very high impact card in Leyline of Sanctity. It still boosts your creatures through Ethereal Armor. It protects your creatures versus Liliana of the Veil being dismantled through Thoughtseize Inquisition decks.
And I think that's one of the really key points here is that against Liliana of the Veil, the traditional weakness of Bogles decks, Leyline of Sanctity really, really does shine and it turns off that angle of attack. But one thing I want to point out here is that Leyline of Sanctity in general is just excellent against a broad proportion of the modern field.
Right. A lot of decks cannot deal with... Storm cannot win game 1, just point blank. If you go Leyline, Storm might as well be packing its cards in most game 1s unless you run main deck empty. And just a lot of decks just get dismantled. Thoughtseize decks are dismantled.
This is
Burn just cries mostly.
Burn can't do a thing, and all the black mid-range decks, whether it's Grixis, Death Shadow, Black Green, Abzan, Jund, what have you, any deck running Inquisition and Thoughtseize all of a sudden is looking at a hand full of of blank cardboard.
But even look at this sequence. If Dan had the Leyline in play, he would have been able to stop this Kitesail Freebooter from getting any value.
So even against creature-based decks like five-color humans, the card has a lot of upside. Now here's Thalia, the Guardian of Thraben, pumping up this champion of the parish. But of course, even through all of this, this hexproof chicanery, the Bogles creatures, they do survive through things like Supreme Verdict, thanks to stuff like the Spider Umbra, Hyena Umbra. These cards are great at protecting these hexproof creatures.
Right. So and here you're going to see, though, a very different mode to these Umbras. Because Dan Ward has not been able to boost his creature past a simple 4/2, it's potentially just going to be Spider Umbra trade for Thalia. Essentially, the Spider Umbra is very good as well in combat situations. Even if you did have enough damage to kill the hexproof creature, the fact that you have this Umbra that can just fall off instead, remove the damage, well, then there we go. You can trade one of your Umbras for one of their creatures when your creature is kind of mid-sized, right? Rather than being a total 10-10, 12-12 monster. It's just like here, a 4/2 or a 5/2 flyer is pretty good too.
Look at this. Griff's Boon is probably one of the most recent additions to the card in terms of when it was printed. I mean, we're only going back, a year or so, back to Shadows over Innistrad here, as this Glade Cover Scout gets in uncontested once again. Of course, the Daybreak Coronet taken by the Kitesail Freebooter, but no worries, Dan says. He's got plenty more action to bring to the table. And Syed looking to be in pretty poor shape here.
It really depends here for me. If Zan has a copy of Mantis Rider in hand, he may actually be in pretty good shape, because then he can attack for free, put the pressure on with Champion of the Parish, Thalia, making all these auras cost way more than they should be.
Yeah, double in most cases, right?
Exactly. And then putting the pressure and being able to block the Glade Clever Scout in case it got boosted. So Mantis Rider is exactly what Zen needed here, and I believe he doesn't have one, since it would have been a pretty clear Windmill Slam. Which means that now this Kitesail Freebooter is in an awkward mode, because do you stay back here? Is that... I'm not even sure that's a winning line, because sure, if Dan slaps almost any aura on this Glade Clever Scout, that's kind of it. That's lethal damage. We're already at 5, it's going to 6.
And this is what we talked about in the fact that chump blocking is not an effective strategy against the Bogles deck due to Rancor.
Exactly. However, certain auras might pump the Glade Clever Scout to 8, but in those situations, you kind of lose no matter what. And basically, I think here the right plan for Zen is going to be to... He has a Reflector Mage. So I like here Reflector Maging the core Spirit Dancer, since it is the... that way Dan cannot draw cards. And like, for example, play a 1-mana aura and draw into a Bogle to block. You can attack then with a 4-power champion, which can get blocked by the Dryad Arbor, and then that leaves you a chance to get there with Mantis Rider. I'm just going to double check if the math works out. Champion would deal 4 since you wouldn't block this turn, plus 2, that's 6. And the Mantis Rider plus 5, that might even be 1 short. So this is actually a really rough spot for Zan. I think he might be 1 short off lethal had he had the position to draw a Mantis Rider.
Those Horizon Canopies as well are very punishing for Syed here, who finds himself on only 6 life once again, as we say. Kitesail Freebooter being copied by the Phantasmal Image. Let's have a look at what Dan Ward is working with. Leyline of Sanctity going to be freebooted away here.
That was kind of an interesting line, since Zen had access to the Mantis Rider and decided not to go for it while having the 2 Horizon Canopies in play, which is a little surprising for me here. The Thalia's Lieutenant, though, seems like a really good way to get a board position, but now let's see. With 2 freebooters, though, Zen is in a good position to block Dan's Glade Cover Scout, and then swing back for lethal. However, Dan can essentially prevent a lot of damage on this champion by blocking... probably with the Dryad Arbor here. This is a really close race.
It's very tight indeed. Syed has knocked himself down to 4 after having played that Lieutenant. And obviously it only saved... he saved the 2 life in giving himself extra toughness for these attackers. But look at this. Kitesail Freebooter getting into the action as well. Is that going to be the case?
That's very risky. Let's see.
Is just dead to any aura here?
Not quite. So, because it's free toughness blocking, actually, yes, any aura. The Phantasmal Image ability essentially means that any aura can target it.
Yeah.
So, any aura is lethal.
It's a removal spell. Essentially, any aura, if he rips a Rancor off the top, he can target the opposing Phantasmal Image, and it's just a straight-up Doomblade.
At that point, the attack with Freebooter seems... I think that might have been incorrect, with this in mind, that any aura would be lethal. Apart from Daybreak, even Daybreak Coronet would kind of work. You couldn't play it on the image, but then you gain a million, not quite a squillion life,
not
as you'd say.
No.
But enough life, and then you could just stay back as well with the Vigilance. So
Dan Ward drawing live here.
Yes.
I mean, the Bogles deck does play a fair few auras, let's be fair.
A smidge.
It's just a light smattering of them dancing throughout the deck here.
About as much auras as I do when I put garlic on my chicken.
Oh yeah.
Overloaded.
Got to have that garlic chicken.
Exactly.
Let's see what Ward's going to do here. It's obviously not a windmill slam because he's drawn off the top and taken a fair bit of time to think about it here. Very, very close game. This game poised on a knife edge, ladies and gentlemen. Zan Syed on 5-color humans. The new hotness in Modern. We saw it have a pretty strong performance, pretty strong showing as the most played deck at the Pro Tour in Bilbao only 1 week ago. Having said that, only 9.5% to 10% of the field was playing. I mean, that's not a huge proportion, even if it is the most played deck.
Welcome to Modern.
Yeah, man, absolutely. What a format it is and how joyous it's been to explore it so far. Horizon Canopy the play for Ward here. But it doesn't stop, ladies and gentlemen. The good news for you, Modern fans around the world, is, of course, it continues to next week at GP Lyon.
Yeah, and Dan Ward is essentially top decking for this game. If he gets any 1-mana aura, he can enchant the Phantasmal Image, triggering its ability, swinging in for that lethal 5 damage.
So Ward cycles away the Horizon Canopy, trying to put Bogles back on the map here.
It looks like I think that's a Spider Umbra. My eyes might be deceiving me, or I'm just going to double check maybe. You know, I have played a lot of Magic, and even myself likes to sometimes reread cards, just double check what they do. So I'm just going to double check Phantasmal Image, make sure that, targeting it works.
Yeah, no, whenever it becomes this target of a spell or ability, you sacrifice it. That's how it works.
Right. But that is a Spider Umbra, right?
I don't think Dan Ward sees the line. I don't think he sees the line.
Oh, wow.
So he is going to give Syed a free block here with a Phantasmal Image by the look of things. And it is a Glade Cover Scout now being played by Ward. Does he have the Umbra in hand? We're going to find out in short order here. You would imagine Syed down to 2. Only 2 blockers available for Ward. That Dryad Upper pushed forward. Dan Ward knows how he wants to get it done here.
Right, and this is probably, with the Reflector Mage, this looks like exactly full. Bounce the Dryad Arbor, get the Champion of the Parish, chump blocked by the Glade Cover Scout. Thalia's free, Freebooters 2, Thalia's Lieutenant 2. And that should do it for this game number 1. It might be that I really believe that was Spider Umbra. I might be wrong.
No, it could not be, but it definitely looked like it.
Yeah, for sure. So that's... Yeah, I'm just rereading Phantasmal Image, and for sure it's when it becomes a target of spell ability, and I think Spider Umbra is enchant any creature, not just creature you control.
No, I think so. Reflector Mage on the Dryad Arbor. Is that going to be enough to wrap it up here for Syed?
This is lethal. Again, block the biggest one and take exactly 7.
Oh dear. Well, if Dan Ward was holding a Spider Umbra, unfortunately, he just punted that game right down the field. I mean, if not, we didn't get a great look at what was in Dan Ward's hand, but unfortunately for him, any way you slice it, he's gone down in game number 1. Syed doing very well to dig his fingers in on the edge of that cliff and haul himself back into game number 1. Well done indeed. 1-0 to him. Let's cast our eyes over the sideboards of these two players here. Eduardo, how are things looking post-board for both of these guys?
So, well, Syed's deck's not exactly tailored to deal with Hexproof or Bogles at all. I'm looking at his sideboard, and short of 2 Dismembers, which he probably doesn't really need to take care of Core Spirit Dancer, since you would keep in some number of Reflector Mages, nothing. I mean, Sin Collector to get rid of Path, or Exadfrid Necromancer to kind of block and have additional value, but there's just almost nothing that Zen can bring in. All
these interactive cards, obviously targeting Dismember, as you mentioned, Hostage Taker, things like Sin Collector have a little bit of upside, but even an Is It Staticaster just isn't going to get it done here.
None of that's going to really work. On the other side, though, 2 Path to Exile to add in. Dan is looking for this matchup. So the difference here is that while neither player wants to board in many cards, Dan's deck is engineered to beat a deck like 5-color humans.
Yeah.
And that's why his sideboard doesn't have many options. Zen is just kind of
pre-boarded against them, right?
Yeah. So Dan Ward is pre-boarded. Zen, this is a bad matchup for him, which he's managed to steal in this first game. So what I foresee happening is Dan on the play managing it with any average hand to take over in game 2, and then in game 3, Zen on the play potentially getting there with a quick Champion of the Parish, Fowler's Lieutenant, or those Kitesail Freebooters being so key.
Yeah, really, really important, both stripping away a card and also maybe putting up some blocks to prevent any evasive creatures from getting through. And of course, Zan winning one on the free skis there. He's got to be happy with that in game number 1 as we see him reconfigure his list there. And again, not a lot going on for him. One thing I want to ask you about, however, is Dromoka's command out of the board for Daniel Ward. Is that what he wants to be doing as a way to, I mean, maybe control his opponent's board a little more with the fight mode, or just bump up his creature with a +1/+1? What do you think?
I think it's a good 5th Path to Exile. The most likely sideboard strategy for Dan, because there's only 4 Kitesail Freebooters, is probably going to be lose the free Leyline of Sanctity, get a Dromoka's command, get 2 Path to Exile, kind of stick to the plan.
Yeah, Leyline of Sanctity is obviously, it has some good upside against something like a Kitesail Freebooter, but honestly not at its best in a creature-based matchup. It's more for the interactive or combo matchups.
Right. Matchups where Thoughtseize exist,
Yeah.
Liliana of the Veil.
Great
those are
shot.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's a little worse. It's a little worse against Storm than might at first appear in post-board games, since they have access to pieces of the puzzle plus wipe away strategy and can board and empty the warrants. Although Bogles is pretty well engineered to beat a bunch of 1/1s thanks to some 10/10 trample,
Yeah.
life linking, vigilance.
Haste, first strike, double strike, triple strike, last strike,
Well,
banding, indestructible.
how many more abilities do you have in the
I'll
tank?
tell you what, when we were playing, I drafted Unstable with a couple of the Bendigo boys back at home in Australia, and there was the 7-drop 3/3 where it gains every time an opponent plays a spell, you can name you got 5 seconds, you name a keyword, and it gains it. And well, look, I didn't do too well, but I definitely got some practice in. It's the heat of the moment. It's that pressure. You got to come up with it, and it can be very, very difficult. Unstable, by the way, absolute rockstar all-star set. It is so much. Did you get a chance to draft much of it?
Yeah, I was at GP, I want to say, Madrid. And after day 2 kind of ended for us,
Yeah.
just went to see Unstable, and I just saw endless tables of high
It was
fives everywhere.
So good, man.
You know, 1 white gains 16.
Yeah. It was so good, that format. Just take all the removal and you win every game, but it was a lot of fun, a lot of silly nonsense going on there. Looks like Dan Ward is down to 6 now with his Bogles list. Zhang Syed happy with his 7. We can see their phantasmal image. I mean, in that last... oh, no, he's going to go down to 6 as well. Doesn't want to hold on to the 2-mana clone with no downside.
I think that the rationale for that, I only saw 1 land, I believe, in his hand. So
It's a bit of a loosey-goosey hand there to start things off for Zhang Syed. He's going to send them packing, and both players down to 6. In round number 15 of GP Toronto here, the format, of course, modern. It's been great to have so many people around the world tune in to enjoy the coverage. We've had an absolute blast bringing it to you so far, and of course, the hits don't stop. We've got the top 8 coming your way at the conclusion of this round. Eduardo and I will be in here along with JVL, TBS, and the rest of the team here in Toronto. And we'd like to thank you for choosing to spend your weekend with us. It's been terrific to have your company, and we're hoping it'll continue, of course, into the future. Modern is going to be the modern train is pulling into Lyon next week. I'll be zipping back across the Atlantic to join Simon and Matei and all the rest of the EU coverage guys to get across that tournament. I'm very much hoping you're going to be able to enjoy that with us as well. These players down to 6 here, Eduardo. Mulligans affecting both decks more or less on the same level here, or is one person going to be more punished?
I would say that Dan can operate on fewer cards better than Zan can.
Okay.
Because Zan is playing a creature deck that, at its best, uses critical mass. Cards like Fali's Lieutenant want a lot of other humans in play. Champion of the Parish gets better once you have multiple creatures to play. So Zan is a lot more punished by Mulligan, while Dan Ward only needs his creature to start getting to a certain stage before it's undealable. There's not much of a difference between a 7/7 Vigilance, Trample, lifelinking creature and a 12/12 one, essentially.
Well, it looks like Zhang Syed has gone down to 5 here, so the humans deck is really paying the price. This is not a great start here in game number 2 after stealing game number 1. Syed down to 5 cards. Can see a Noble Hierarch and a land. That is going to do it.
It's an excellent 5, actually. Noble Hierarch, Mantis Rider, Phantasmal Image. Zan's plan, get to the skies quick.
Well, we'll see how Zan's plan lines up against Dan's plan and see what he's going to do here with the Noble Hierarch kicking things off, as we mentioned. Dan Ward goes searching. Doesn't have that turn 1 hexproof creature, Dryad Arbor.
But he has
fetched up by the... this fetch line here. Continue, sorry.
No, it's all good. Here, he has the turn 1 creature, though. The Dryad Arbor.
Yeah.
And I can see the Spirit Mantle. One of the few ways that the human... There we go. One of the few ways that the humans deck has to interact with creatures is Reflector Mage. Spirit Mantle blanks that entirely. So it might as well have X-Proof if those dismembers have not come in.
This is a smart play from Dan Ward. He knows... Oh, no, it's not. Oh, my goodness me. Waiter, please bring me a hot, steaming bowl of my own words. I'm a hungry boy.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, dear.
Well, that was... yeah. Okay, well... for the what's the warning? Don't try this at home.
Yeah.
If Zen, now Zen's gonna needs to focus. It's okay to make errors. Just refocus, cast that Mantis Rider next turn, take to the skies.
So Dan Ward, to get things back on track, has played masterfully here, knowing that Dryad Arbor doesn't really need hexproof, can still be loaded up with a huge number of auras here, because effectively there's nothing for the hexproof to protect it from the 5-color humans list. They're not playing Fatal Push, Path to Exile, Lightning Bolt, what have you, and so that Dryad Arbor, as long as it's got protection from creatures, Oh, dearie me.
Yep. Only Dismember. Not a card that I think Zan should board in because core Spirit Dancer is a potential threat. But only access to 2 copies of it anyways. So he may have boarded in and not drawn it, and now like he is in a world of hurt. If he had played Mantis Rider last turn, it might have been possible for him to race through Rider attacking for 4 last turn plus another Rider next. I think the way this is lining up though, if Dan has anything else in hand, he's gonna just take over.
So here we have a Noble Hierarch, and we have the Mantis Rider poking in for 5, thanks to that double Exalted trigger, Ward down to 13. So the race is on here, but I tell you what, Ward is a long way ahead. Those auras not even touching the Dryad Arbor, which is slamming and jamming for a huge hit here.
Yeah, they're counting, but...
it's all academic at this point.
9. 9 is the answer, but yeah, it's... Right, and look at Dan's life total, 13. Had that Mantis Rider hit happen, down to 9, plus the image last turn, that would have been enough. Zan would have been able to take this game down.
Oh dear, so Zan Syed punished for not understanding what has... I mean, let's be very clear, an incredibly corner case interaction. This was not an obvious interaction here, but paying the price for it with his Reflector Mage play early on. Kitesail Freebooter, let's see what's going on in Dan Ward's. But it is Path to Exile on the Mantis Rider, which is going to relieve the pressure even further. Another path going the way of the Kitesail Freebooter here.
Well, the Kitesail Freebooter does get this path. But yeah, it's kind of incredible. If game 1 we observe that Spider Umbra correctly, it seems like, well, at least it's fair on both sides, I would say.
Yeah. Yes, both players have certainly taken lines that could be diplomatically described as non-optimal here, Eduardo.
Yes.
But after the dust has settled, it seems like Zanside also going to pack them up there, and we're going to go to game number 2, or game number 3, I should say. So justice has a way of serving itself, ladies and gentlemen. And that is the way she goes here for game number 2 of this 15-round match of Modern here at GP Toronto. It's great to have you with us here. This is, of course, a win and in during the final stages of the Swiss here. You're watching MTG Red Zone with Riley Knight, and alongside me it is, of course, Eduardo Saj-Gallic. And tell me, my friend, how things are looking as we head towards the top 8. All of these top tables, it's win and in Magic from here on out.
Yes, 6 tables of the 7, pure win and in Magic at its core. Win and you're in, lose some cash, go home. It wasn't a bad weekend, but not the primo piece that you wanted.
Not the finest Pepsi in the fridge for sure.
Yeah.
But on the back tables, we're going to have a chance to check in with Justin Murphy and Ben Ragan. We've got John Stern playing Burn, and Yoshihiko Ikawa, of course. Sam Lowe and Chris Dockrell are down on table 7, and this is where things start to get dicey. Kevin Brunnan and Cody Gravel. An outside chance here that those guys will make the top 8 on breakers, but it's looking like the losers in those match, in addition to the winners, won't be getting in because, of course, we've got a lot of tables. Weird situation here where we will have a player on 39 points that doesn't make it into the top 8. Still going to the Pro Tour. They still get that Pro Tour invite. Don't worry about that. But they're not going to be fighting for fame, glory, and 5 figures of cash here at the top 8 of this Grand Prix here. We've got double pile shuffling going on once again. Dan Ward with his characteristic 10 pile. Zan Syed on that 8 pile shuffle here. And hopefully, before too much longer, we'll be back at it hammer and tongs between these two blokes, Dan and Zan. How are things looking here? You're still favouring Bogles post board?
I would definitely favor Bogles, especially on the play in this matchup. Zan's best chance to victory is to put pressure through cards like Mantis Rider having a wide board. It's a lot harder, or getting a key freebooter down, getting that Thalia Guardian of Thraben down. And the fact that Dan gets an extra turn without these cards in play really favors the Bogles player. 7
off the top, there we go. The yellow sleeves Dan Ward pairing nicely with the black sleeves of Zan Syed. Look at that, like the Richmond Tigers, September 2017. Never forget, ladies and gentlemen, what a deep cut that is for all the AFL fans everywhere. My team in football, Australian football, very useless team, won the grand final last year. We couldn't believe it. First final in 3 decades. But right now, we're all about the finals of GP Toronto, looking for both of these players to make an entrance there. Noble Hierarch meeting a Glade Cover Scout here. Zan Syed kicking things off with a little Manadorksky. See what the follow-up is. Yeah. It's going to be a champion of the parish.
Sure. Just to quickly kind of correct here, Obviously, since Dan won the last game, Zan's on the play. But everything I've said just applies in reverse. Zan gets those threats first, but missing the second land drop is actually pretty critical because it means that Zan needs to deploy that Noble Hierarch, which means the champion. So less disruptive creatures. So Dan gets one free turn of rain to just unload and get that Glade Cover Scout to the skies.
Just down to heads down to JCPenney and fills up a shopping bag full of as many pairs of pants as it can find here. And we'll see exactly how many Dan Ward can get on. He's having a good old think about it here. What's the decision going through his mind?
I can spot in Dan Ward's hand a Core Spirit Dancer. So Core Spirit Dancer is an extremely interesting card in situations like this because in a lot of matchups, like against creature decks, you normally want to get your hexproof creature growing as fast as possible. But if you can get a Core Spirit Dancer down first, if the pressure's not too high, you can really go sky high and really draw more and more and more cards.
Play that value game.
Right. But then might be worried about a Thalia Guardian of Thraben coming down and disrupting his plans. So it's a bit of a weak aura here, but I would say that maybe Dan has access to a Daybreak Coronet or Path to Exile, something of that ilk, so that the tempo kind of works, right? You go 1 mana aura plus counterplay what my opponent does.
And we don't see Bogles as one of the most disruptive decks in the format, but if Zan Syed here can put a big threat into play and something like a Mantis Rider, and Dan Ward can answer that cleanly with a Path to Exile, hey, that's a great that's a great exchange for Ward, except for the fact that it does give his opponent a land. How much is he considering that, given that Syed is only stuck on the Ancient Ziggurat there?
It's a very strong consideration. However, the second land removes a lot of that consideration.
Okay.
And there's already two, but even if Zan didn't have it, there's already 2 mana sources with Noble, and that's not something that Dan can easily disrupt. So I don't think Dan's concerned about Zan, giving Zan mana at this point.
So Thalia's Lieutenant comes down. We're going to see a couple of counters placed on the Champion of the Parish, and these Noble Hierarchs are going to hit the gym, juice up, jack up, and now...
Apple picking, that's how they get the muscles.
Oh yeah, out in the orchard all day. It's tough work there. And then a Noble Hierarch to increase the power of the Thalia's Lieutenant as well. And, okay, a bit of interference there from old good mate Beej down in the feature match area. With they've gone for the D8s this weekend. Interesting choice. Bit of longsword damage for all the dice on your screen there.
I call a D8 the hopeful dice.
Mm-hmm.
When you put a D8 on an Arcbound Ravager, Champion of the Parish.
Oh yeah, you're like, I can go all the way to 8, buddy. I can go all the way to 8. All the way to 8. Over in Europe, of course, on the other side of the Atlantic, we do tend to use the D12s quite often, which it's good to see. They don't often get used.
It's all about optimism.
Well, I just like the fact that the underdog die, the fact that the D12, unless you're playing a barbarian in D&D, you're never rolling a D12. You're never rolling a D12. You need it for your hit points and your great axe, and that's about it. Outside of that, when are you ever rolling a D12?
For fun.
It just doesn't come up that much. It's good to see a bit of love going the way of...
Actually, I have a good answer for you.
Okay, here we go.
When you Burning Inquiry.
Oh yeah, sure. When your opponent's on 10 cards on turn number 1, you just use a D10, really, don't you?
11 cards.
11 cards. All right. Yep.
We found the line.
We found the single line. There we go. We got it covered with our D12s over on the other side of the Atlantic. Dan Ward finds a Plains with this Windswept Heath here.
Yeah. Again, here, I believe Dan is probably going to aim to Path to Exile this champion if he has access to the card, and the Path to Exile would be the most sensible card to go with his play. And if I was Zan seeing Spider Umbra go with a untapped Windswept Heap, I would have kind of seen this coming a long time ago.
Oh yeah. That path was telegraphed a long way away, signposted by the way Ward was playing. So the mana troubles of Zan Syed are over. He's going to be able to fetch out a Plains here from his deck, unless we got something very silly going on.
Something interesting that may not have been that obvious. The reason that Noble Hierarch is in the red zone tapped, Zan knew about that Path to Exile. Why attack with the champion?
Yeah, right.
Get that. Dan is priced into pathing anyways because, you're going to be short on mana. You need to use every point. So might as well get 2 damage in rather than wasting that, rather than 0. So that's really heads-up play by Zhang. I really like that.
I think he got an extra 3. He got 3 points in there thanks to the 4 points even.
Four,
thanks to
wow,
the,
yeah. 4 instead of 0. That's a lot better.
Yep, because he knew that champion was going to eat the path anyway. So, yeah, good stuff there from Zhan's side as he navigates the treacherous waters of this matchup here. And Dan Ward has diversified his threat portfolio here with a core Spirit Dancer in addition to that Glade Cover Scout. Looks like he's trying to play a bit of a longer game here. Maybe that's the way his hand is set up.
Yeah, the path to exile, going for core Spirit Dancer plus Spider Hunter on turn 3. This line is sadly a little weak to Reflector Mage, but the Spider Umbra on Glade Cover Scout would probably not have done a lot of work since it's not large enough anyways to just block one of the creatures profitably, and free doesn't change much. So the Spider Umbra being able to block and just trade for damage is fine. So Dan decides, as you say, to diversify his threats, but this Reflector Mage is so punishing.
Yeah, finally, Zanside getting the work he wants out of that uncommon from Oath of the Gatewatch, and in comes Thalia's Lieutenant. G's attacking for a bunch here, taking for 7 points of damage. Those Exalted triggers really stack up quick, Eduardo.
Yeah, that's why Noble Hierarch is incredible.
Jeez, what a card it is. What a card. Just a 0-1 there, but it gets so much work done. It's quite incredible here.
Yeah. The fact that it's a human paying off years in advance. Printed, I believe, in 2009, 2010, and now we're in 2018. Human creature type.
Yep, it's so critical in this, in specifically in this deck. Of course, if he cast off that unclaimed territory, in addition to the Cavern of Souls.
Yeah,
and a chump block here with the Glade Cover Scout. Dan Ward is in a rough position here.
I suspect the Spider actually decided to chump block here for flavor purposes.
And a Rancor as well, in addition to the Hyena Umbra. But what is Ward going to do?
So here, one thing is these Noble Hierarchs mean that Zhan's board is pretty strong at sending a singular large creature, but not very good at sending a wide board of creatures. If Zhan was to attack with all his creatures, well, they'd be like a bunch of 1/2s and 2 3s and 2 2s. This doesn't really get the job done at 13 life. So this means that Zhan's going to have to keep sending a big creature, which these Umbras do help against. And if Dan can get a Daybreak Coronet going, that's what Dan needs. He needs a Daybreak Coronet stat. Essentially, once that Daybreak Coronet hits a Glade Cover Scout, it becomes almost impossible for Zhan to get through for damage, or to really block the Glade Cover Scout, and that's the main issue.
So straight away, it's just a Daybreak Coronet. Is that just like GG easy, or does it just make it into a real game?
I think it makes it into a real game because without that card, I don't think Dan can come back really into the game. Zhan's board is a little too large. It is wide enough that if Dan took one hit from that Thalia's Lieutenant with the Exalted triggers, that he'd be behind. And interestingly here, lets the freebooter take the path to exile. Essentially recognizing, because of the Champion of the Parish and the Free Noble Hierarchs, that any of Zhan's threads is going to be extremely large. So path doesn't really have that much value here, and would rather incentivize Zhan to take the path. So essentially, the path doesn't have much value if it's not used on attack. So Dan wants to go Spirit Dancer into Rancor and try to draw a little further into his deck until he can hit that Daybreak Coronet and break.
But then I think if you're Zhan's side, you just take the Rancor. I don't think you give your opponent what they want. If Dan Ward hadn't wanted Zhan's side to take the path, he would have snapped it off. If I'm Zhan in that situation, I take the Rancor every time because obviously my opponent wants me to take the path. I'm not going to do what he wants. No one tells me how to live my life. I do what I want. I don't play by anyone's rules. Not even my own, Eduardo.
This is actually a really close one. And the rationale for it being close is that path has value if it was used when Zhan was attacking. It doesn't have much value pre-combat because the Noble Hierarchs make anything into a large threat. So essentially, Zhan could choose, I can attack with the Lieutenant or I could attack with the Champion of the Parish. So the path has no value until it's used in the combat step. But yeah, here's Zhan deciding to go for a wide attack.
Just slam and jam. Let's get it done here, says Zhan Syed with a big attack now. 4 creatures getting in. And Dan Ward now in a position he has to respond. He's got to do something, otherwise he's just stone cold dead ski. What can he do here, Eduardo? Not a lot of options for him, especially now that path is gone.
Yes. So it's a question here. If Dan can redraw a path to exile, that'd be one of two outs. He could path the freebooter, get the path back, path the Value's Lieutenant, while here blocking the champion of the parish, since the Gladecover Scout is a 4/2 first striker. But that would put him down to a very low 2 life. If Dan was to draw Daybreak Coronet this turn, which is another 4 outs on top of the 2 for path, killing the champion puts him to 2. He Daybreak Coronets, goes back to 9, and then he can block the Value's Lieutenant if it's a singular attack and trade for the Hyena Umbra, gaining 7 again, going to 16. Or if Zen attacked with a wider board, just blocking anything kind of works. So for me here, I would say that Dan is a very awkward position, but you have to start dealing with Zan's threats. So here, I would block the champion and hope to draw one of my 6 most important cards remaining, since I don't think I can win a game without drawing a Daybreak Coronet or a path in this spot.
Well, here's the block here for Ward. Champion's going to get eaten up now. The Thalia's Lieutenant does get across. Back to Ward now, finds something off the top. What is it? It is a Daybreak Coronet. A Daybreak Coronet off the top here for Dan Ward, opening this game entirely now with a Rancor as well, and he is going to get stuck in a major way now. It's got First Strike, Trample, Flying, Lifelink, Vigilance, Hexproof. It's got just about every creature keyword we've seen in the last 15 years.
Yeah, the reach is the only thing that kind of left. But an important thing actually was that the freebooter can attack for 4, but this is 9 power. I forgot to mention the Rancor that was still in his hand and dealing that additional power. Dan managing to find his out. And now 9 power of First Strike. If the Value's Lieutenant attacks, Dan can choose to trade it with the Hyena, the attack with the Hyena Umbra, gaining another 9 life, or simply taking the damage. And now Zan is in a really rough spot here, because the Lieutenant attacking has 9 power, but blocking only has 6.
What a huge draw here for Dan Ward. The only card really that was going to get him out of this sticky morass that he found himself in. But right now, he's in a good spot to continue to, just to completely turn this game around here. I believe his life total should be a fair bit higher. I mean, the creature has lifelink, right?
Yes. So if Dan's life total, I believe it would have been a 2. But we'll kind of, I'm sure like that adjustment will come. But yeah, Dan, if you're like just coming in, Dan Ward is at much more life than 4 at this point. I believe he would be at, if he was at 4 previously, he would now be at 13 and then losing 4 here from the attack, so back to 9.
Back to 9, there we go.
There we
saw
go.
That exact transaction just happen on you before your very eyes, ladies and gentlemen, on the screen. So that is that. We got that all sorted out now, and Syed, geez, he has to find a way forward. This is a very tricky situation from him. This is swinging around like a pendulum.
Yeah, and it's almost impossible to block here. Basically, the First Strike, killing all the high-power creatures first means that Zan, can't kill the Gladecover Scout blocking. I mean, even if he could, that Umbra would just trade for 3 or 4 creatures.
Yeah, it's huge, especially given the fact that Ward's creature has First Strike. So Ward now clips Syed down to 1 by the look of things, gains another.
Wow, what a top deck,
huge chunk of life. But yeah, I mean, you live by the top of your deck in some situations, and Dan Ward has just a pretty hefty rip from him there, and that is going to be enough to propel him into the top 8 of GP Toronto. A timely rip, and Zan Syed can't believe his luck in a game, in a match that was fraught with plays that once again could be diplomatically described as less than perfect. It was very, very swingy by the end of things there, and Dan Ward manages to take it home for Team Rock and Roll. Well done indeed to him. More magic coming your way, my friends. You're not going to want to miss a moment, so stick with us here at GP Toronto. We've got to go to a break, but we'll see you back here on the other side of it. We'll see you soon. Welcome back to continued coverage of GP Toronto, ladies and gentlemen, here on the tournament floor. My name is Riley Knight, and I'm joined, of course, by Eduardo Sajgalik, and we are getting very close to the top 8 announcement. Here and now, however, it is time for some Time Walk Magic featuring Canada's own John Stern. So let's get underway and see what happened here between these two players, Yoshihiko Ikawa on Tron, John Stern on Burn, and it is a Goblin Guide Eduardo kicking things off for Stern. A great start from him.
Yes, exactly how you want to start matches of Magic with Burn, revealing the top card of your opponent's deck. It's very similar to Lantern in that fashion.
Oh, yeah. Lantern and Burn are very, very similar. We actually saw at the Pro Tour. I know you're playing silly buggers here and making some very, very funny jokes here, Eduardo. But at the Pro Tour, on camera, we saw a Lantern player burn out John Stern with Collective Brutality. He had him under the complete lock. Stern couldn't do a thing. Stern had to Lightning Helix his own creature to stay alive to the recurring Collective Brutality, but eventually the Lantern control actually burnt John Stern out. So it happens. The funniest things can happen in Magic.
Indeed.
Also, I'm really sorry about being sarcastic about your comments, because it's been really fun to work with you, and you're actually a very funny person. So I'm sorry.
Thank you so
for
much.
being rude.
But it's okay. You didn't know the end of the joke.
Oh, go on. Oh, even worse. I feel like an even bigger turkey now. Continue.
Did you know that John has 3 ensnaring bridges in his sideboard?
Are you kidding?
Nope.
He's playing 3. So this John Stern is playing 3 ensnaring bridges in the sideboard of a Burn deck.
Yeah, it's a Lantern deck. Reveal the opponent's top card, ensnaring bridge them.
Lock them out with ensnaring bridge. Well, Eidolon of the Great Revel doesn't really line up with what the Lantern strategies are all about here. But I mean, I guess that's great tech, right? Just shuts down creatures as you chuck the lava spikes at their head.
This was tech back from Standard when 7th edition was around.
Wow.
With Grafted Skullcap and Ensnaring Bridge. Draw an extra card each turn and discard your hand with Ensnaring Bridge, so burn your opponent out.
Jeez, all right. Well, some techie stuff here from John Stern. I really want to catch up with him and see how that card has gone, because I've never seen that kind of technology in the board as well. I know he's playing Leyline of Sanctity in the board here as well. So Stern's got a hot take here on the Burn archetype. Right now, Ikawa is under the gun with an Eidolon and a Monastery Swiftspear joining that Goblin Guide and beating down. He's down to 12 already, but look at this. Easy game. 3 lands, 1/7 drop, and that is going to be that here for John Stern, now facing down a turn 3 card.
Easy game for John, you mean? This matchup is horrific for the Tron deck, exactly for that situation. Essentially, it's very hard for the Tron deck to lock the Burn deck out. The Burn spell's not something you can counter with Karn.
So even after the turn 3 Karn there for Ikawa, Stern taking the match very, very easily in style after a bolt pointed upstairs at the Domesky, and Ikawa had to pack them up. That is that for John Stern in game number 1. Quick game's a good game. That's why John Stern is hustling and bustling with his mountains here. Kicking things off with Stomping Ground. Are we going to see the perfect start again? No, Suspended Riftbolt.
The worst start.
The worst start. Well, there are worse starts. Like you could go like Mountain, Bolt, me, go.
Sure.
Oh, whoops. Yeah, but in this situation here, Sylvan Scrying is going to make sure Ikawa has that turn 3 Tron.
Turn 3 unnatural Tron?
Unnatural Tron.
Interestingly, I like that John Stern also decided to go with the flavor of where we are.
Oh, yeah.
Snow-covered mountains.
Snow-covered mountains.
Okay, all this joking aside, essentially what Ikawa wants to do kind of post-board, he has 3 copies of Collective Brutality. He's going to board those in. He's also going to board in the 2 copies of Nature's Claim, his target, his own artifacts.
Oh, yeah. Gain some life.
Yes. He also has 2 copies of Fodnot Seer and Fractusk, 2 apiece. And essentially, what Ikawa wants to do in these post-board games to give him a chance against Burn is playing these mid-range threats that basically gain at least 3 life. Fodnot Seer getting a key Burn spell. Fractusk gaining 5. Putting the pressure on the Burn deck, and that's exactly what the Tron deck needs, is a better way to put pressure on Burn.
Because Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger is just, as a 10 drop, just a touch too slow.
Exactly. So here, we want Ikawa to get, if you are a fan of the darkness that is Tron.
If you're a person with no taste in refinement and enjoy playing Tron, well, Ikawa's the man for you, man for the job here as he propels himself closer and closer to this top 8 here with both these players essentially, Eduardo, playing a straight-up win-and-in. We expect the winner of this match to be in the top 8. Here is a Worm Coil Engine, and that is a nice way for Ikawa here to batten down the hatches.
Yeah, Worm Coil Engine, definitely an extraordinarily scary card for Burn. 6/6 lifelink. other things, but 6/6 lifelink being the key.
That's the main thing we're looking at here.
Right. And I kind of like Ikawa's position in post-board games where he's on the play, because he has time to assemble his Tron, he has time to get a Wormcoil. But that Path to Exile, heads up play by John, he understands that Wormcoil Engine is a card he cannot beat if he let it in play. So he has to board in those 2 Path to Exiles, exactly gets it at the right moment.
So the perfect answer here for Stern. It's really the only clean answer to Wormcoil Engine in Modern, of course, because the triggered ability for Wormcoil is when it dies. A swamp coming off the top here for Ikawa. Nice stuff as this Goblin Guide continues to find the way forward. But that Wormcoil Engine could have been a huge headache for John Stern playing Burn, but Path to Exile is going to clean things up nicely. Eidolon of the Great Revel here.
Yeah. So here, it's going to be pretty tight. Ikawa needs one of his other cards, other creature mid-range threats. Fodnots here, Fractusk. A Collective Brutality here would be okay, but not enough. Ikawa really needs threat plus solution. So Fractusk and Fodnots here are both in one single package, but Karn here, not good enough. For Karn to be good, you need to back it up with a Collective Brutality, at least in my view, in this situation.
Well, here is a Karn. Going to sacrifice that Sanctum of Ugin, and Ikawa has 1 mana floating. Looks like Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger has stayed in. The lunch buffet is still being served, and Ulamog's determined to take advantage of it. 1 colorless mana floating here for Ikawa, and is he just going to go straight onto the Collective Brutality now?
Well, if he has it, he will. But I haven't seen one necessarily in his hand. And this is going to be a big draw, but
Forest.
Yeah, the Ancient Stirring's not really any 1 mana spell that's going to be great here. Giving John Stern a full turn here to use a burn spell plus that Goblin Guide attack. But if Ikawa gets to untap, he has a chance. That Fallout Seer can get rid of a high damage burn spell if John being at no cards is actually for me, because John is at no cards, Ikawa is actually hugely advantaged. So for the viewers at home, that was actually a pretty little important detail. John not having the cards in hand. So now John needs to top deck way too much, which means that he's quite behind. But I love this Vaccine Devil. It's just very bad here.
Spicy little one over there. Kitchen table magic at its finest. John Stern 1 turn with burn to find the way forward towards a victory. Ikawa on 8, about to untap with a whole stack of mana here. Worldbreaker, Ulamog in hand for him.
Yeah. Perfect spot for Ulamog. Play Ulamog, remove the 2 lands, Karn away. I guess you can Karn away the last land, which means that John cannot top deck really any spells. Then if John attacks with both the creatures, I think this is okay too, though. Leaving John on 1 land is totally fine.
So, Ikawa on that mana denial plan, but John Stern, he's got the mountain, he's got the Goblin Guide. What else does a burn player need, Eduardo?
An opponent at less than 8 life.
That's very true, I suppose, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Let me just go and grab that umbrella, seeing as you're raining on my parade. Here comes the Worldbreaker as well. Not the only storm cloud on the horizon here for Stern. Let's look at this. The Ulamog tucks into a tasty dinner of Stern's library, and that is that. 1-1. Ikawa and Stern heading to game number 3. We are right at the end here of MTG Red Zone with Riley Knight, and joining me, of course, Eduardo Sajgalik. Great to have you along as we find out who is in the top 8 of GP Toronto. Vexing Devil comes down for 4 damage to Ikawa.
Yes, much better on turn 1.
Oh yeah, much better.
Essentially, Ikawa's forced to pay the life since he has no real clean answer to a 4/3 coming down this early. So he pays 4 life because he's going to take at least a hit for 4. So there's no point in giving John the creature.
In almost all situations, you will just take 4 from the Vexing Devil. I mean, in some, we saw in last time, if you've got a straight up answer to it that isn't going to cost you any life and you are going to be able to deal with it, yeah, fine, whatever. Play your 4/3 for 1. I don't give a damn. But most of the time, especially on turn 1, you'll just see players take the 4 damage.
Exactly. Except that they're Jeskai and have access to Path to Exile, Lightning Bolt in the world. But yes. It's kind of the problem with the Vexing Devil. It looks amazing, right? Like, yeah. It's a 4/3 for 1, or it's 4 damage. Problem, because your opponent's the one to choose, it's usually not the greatest card. But John plays 1 because it's a way for his deck to play a card that costs 1 mana, and he only plays 2 Skullcracks. He essentially doesn't want too many 2 damage burn spells, and this is a way to lower his curve just a smidge, but that's good enough sometimes.
Riftbolt suspended off of that stomping ground as well here for Stern. Ikawa cracks his star, finds a forest. And a Sylvan Scry is going to ensure that he has that turn 3 Tron. We see this so often from the green Tron decks. So good at assembling Tron early between Expedition Map and Sylvan Scry.
Yep, extremely consistent. And that Worm Coil Engine's going to come rumbling down next turn.
Oh, yeah, we got a big 6/6, big angry boy coming down.
Yeah. Here, the card that would be on my mind if I was Ikawa would be, because John fetched that Stomping Ground, would be Destructive Revelry. It's a card I would at least be aware of. And it's actually a pretty important one because John can engineer a situation against Worm Coil where he essentially does a few burn spells this turn, or creatures, ideally. Next turn, Ikawa goes for Worm Coil, and then on attack, John can use a Destructive Revelry. But here, that Fractus...
Yeah, that's a nasty little message there for John Stern. He knows he's got to fight his way through that as well.
Well, it actually depends here. If Ikawa doesn't have a Chromatic Star or Sphere, he can't really cast the Fractus this turn. And if he casts a Worm Coil instead, if John has literally 2 1-mana burn spells or has 1 mana plus 2 and just needs to draw land, this is huge. There's a Lightning Bolt there. There are so many outs in John's deck.
Lightning Helix here, Path to Exile on the...
no need for outs, he had it all.
That's the way that it goes there, with the Path to Exile taking care of that Worm Coil Engine. Lightning Bolt plus Goblin Guide hitting in to Ikawa for Exactsies. A nice clean end to our game there. And John Stern, congratulations to him, flying the flag. He has found himself in the top 8. As we bring you back to the booth, ladies and gentlemen, here at GP Toronto, it's been a great pleasure to have your company throughout the weekend, and we are now going to get set up for the top 8 of GP Toronto. You might be able to hear in the background, the top 8 announcement is currently underway. We're not going to waste a minute of time in sharing those names with you as well. So in first place on 40 points, we had 2 players on 40 points, as you expected, Eduardo. Number 1 was, of course, Luke Purcell. He did very well indeed. We've got Bertrand Joseph Pear on Elves as well, drawing himself into the top 8. Jonathan Zhang in 3rd. Alessandro Pogorzhelsky in number 4. I do apologize, Alessandro, a bit of a mouthfulski for me there. Daniel Ward in 5th. We saw his match. Ben Reagan in 6th. John Stern in 7th. And in 8th, on the tiebreaker sweat, it is Chris Dockrell. So there we go. And unfortunately, Cody Gravel not having the tiebreakers to get into the top 8. But we will be seeing him at the Pro Tour, of course, with 39 match points at the end of the Swiss. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not far away at all from the top 8, and you're not going to want to miss a moment of it. So stick with us. We've got to go to a break. On the other side of it, we will see more modern action here from GP Toronto. Don't go anywhere.